And I have to investigate this again, and in Gobekli was a game share, but I think it's a game share for everything. For 25 years archaeologists dug at Göbekli thinking they understood the site. Then artificial intelligence spotted something impossible. The massive stone circles weren't randomly placed. They formed a perfect triangle, planned from the very beginning by people living 11,000 years ago. Scientists are now questioning everything. How did hunter-gatherers master geometry before farming even existed? And why did they bury their masterpiece immediately after building it? The answers AI revealed are rewriting human history, and the implications are terrifying. In 1963, a group of American and Turkish researchers were walking across a lonely hilltop in southeastern Turkey. The place was called Gobekli, which means Potbelly Hill. Didn't look like much, just a dusty rise of land scattered with a few chunks of limestone sticking out of the ground. They assumed it was just an abandoned medieval cemetery and moved on. For the next 30 years, the hill was forgotten, sitting quietly above the wide plains of Harran. Then in 1994, everything changed. A German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt returned to that same hill. The moment he saw it, something clicked. He later said that as soon as he stood on that rise, he felt this wasn't just a hill. It was a Stone Age site, and a massive one. The stones that others had mistaken for gravestones weren't graves at all. They were something far older. He looked at the gentle curves of the mound and knew he was standing above something extraordinary. Schmidt came back in 1995 with a full team and started digging. They revealed a series of massive stone circles made of towering pillars, each shaped like a giant T and standing up to 5.5 m high. These weren't just rough slabs of rock. Each pillar was carefully carved, polished, and decorated with detailed images of wild animals, strange symbols, and even what looked like human limbs. One particular enclosure, known as Enclosure D, stood out. It was the oldest and most complete circle, and right at its heart stood two colossal pillars over 5 m tall, covered in carvings of lions, foxes, vultures, snakes, scorpions, and gazelles. These creatures weren't chosen randomly. They were drawn from the wild landscape that surrounded the temple over 11,000 years ago. Time when the region was rich with game and untouched by cities or agriculture. But it wasn't just animals carved into the stone. Some pillars had strange shapes, like H's and V's, and even arms and hands, as if the pillars themselves were stylized human figures, maybe gods or ancestors. One of the most famous stones, Pillar 43, often called the vulture stone, showed a scorpion, vulture, and other symbols arranged so precisely that many believe it might be a message, a recording, or even a form of prehistoric storytelling. The level of craftsmanship was astonishing. These people had no metal tools. Everything was carved using flint. Yet they managed to chisel out blocks of limestone weighing tons and transport them just far enough to be arranged into circles. The bedrock on the hill made this possible. It was like nature had given them a giant open-air workshop. Still, even with the natural advantages, moving and erecting those pillars would have taken immense planning, teamwork, and effort. It wasn't a job for a few hunters. It needed hundreds of people, ropes, levers, and possibly weeks of labor for each piece. Then came the part that puzzled everyone even more. After building these stunning structures, the people of Gobekli began burying them. They didn't abandon the site. They filled the enclosures with rubble, tools, bones, and debris, as if performing some strange ceremonial act. Once buried, they moved to a new spot nearby and built another circle, then buried that one too. This process went on for centuries, and over time it created the large artificial hill we see today. Nobody knows exactly why they did this. Some believe each circle marked a particular event, maybe the death of a leader, the end of a cycle, and the burial was part of the ritual. But that act of burial, whatever its purpose, had an unexpected gift for archaeologists thousands of years later. It preserved the pillars and carvings in near-perfect condition. When Schmidt's team cleared away the layers from Enclosure D, they found carvings still sharp, untouched by weather, as if they had just been made. The site also gave clues about what life might have looked like back then. Over 100,000 animal bones were found, many cracked and cut from butchery. Around 60% of those bones came from gazelles, suggesting large-scale hunting. Other bones came from boars, deer, sheep, and birds like cranes and ducks. The evidence pointed to mass feasts, possibly seasonal events where people gathered for miles around. Massive stone basins found nearby may have been used for preparing food or drinks. Some archaeologists even believe the people might have brewed an early form of beer, using wild grains, offering a picture of feasting, worship, and celebration all in one place. The carvings themselves give more than just decoration. They hint at beliefs, rituals, and possibly even a form of mythology. Foxes appear again and again, carved on multiple pillars, their skulls placed in the buried layers, suggesting they were seen as spiritually important. Vultures also appear frequently, and this has led some to think that the people of Göbekli practiced sky burial where the dead were left in the open for birds to consume. This wasn't uncommon in early human societies, especially where beliefs linked vultures to the soul's journey after death. Schmidt once suggested that Göbekli might have been a sacred necropolis, a place where the dead were honored under the open sky. From the top of the hill surrounded by wild animals and symbols of death and rebirth, the souls of the dead might have looked out across the sweeping plains, a place of silence, an eternal watching. As Schmidt put it, they were looking out over a hunter's dream. What Göbekli represents is still debated. Was it a burial site, gathering place, a sacred calendar, a temple to gods? We'll never know. No one can say for sure. But what's undeniable is this. It was built at a time when humans were still nomadic, when agriculture was just beginning to take shape. And yet, the scale of its construction demands organization, belief, and cooperation on a massive level. The people behind Gobekli weren't farmers. They weren't even settled villagers. They were still hunter-gatherers. There were no signs of domesticated wheat or barley. No sheep, no goats. These were groups still living off wild plants and animals. And yet, they came together and built this place nearly 12,000 years ago, around 9,600 BCE. That's long before the pyramids of Egypt, long before Stonehenge, and long before writing ever appeared. It changed everything. Until then, the idea was that agriculture came first and then large buildings and organized religion followed. But Göbekli Tepe flipped that idea on its head. Archaeologists like Klaus Schmidt and Juris Peters studied the region closely. They found that the land around Göbekli Tepe was rich in wild resources. There were wild sheep and goats roaming the hills and wild grains like eorn wheat growing in the fields. The ingredients for farming were all there, just waiting to be used. And then, something strange happened.